You are not going to believe your ears. A Democrat advisor made the most unhinged suggestion to Joe Biden live on CNN, and the panelists could do nothing but laugh in his face. Jamal Simmons, as someone who's held a very prominent role in the Democratic Party, literally wants Joe Biden to resign and make Kamala the first female president just to spite the Republicans for the next 2 months. If you don't believe me, watch this for yourself before I tell you more about it.
Is looking for. That is my question. I'll start with you.
Joe Biden's been a phenomenal president. He's lived up to so many of the promises he's made. There's one promise left that he could fulfill, being a transitional figure. He could resign the presidency in the next 30 days, make Kamala Harris the president of the United States.
Whoa.
It would absolve her from being able to, from having to oversee the January 6th transition, right, of her own defeat. And it would make sure that it would dominate the news at a point where Democrats have to learn drama and transparency and doing things that the public want to see is the time. This is the moment for us to change the entire perspective of how Democrats
this
operate.
has now jumped from an internet meme to a Sunday morning show.
Jamal's out here right now.
Congratulations.
Season of House of Cards.
What? I would forgive you for thinking that this was said jokingly, as did the panel, when they chuckled in response, but there's no punchline and it's exactly as absurd and radical as it sounds. Jamal Simmons is the party's communications director, was in charge of articulating the Democratic message to the public, which perhaps explains why it lost terribly. By the way, this is a great time to subscribe and hit the notification bell because we've got things in the pipeline that you do not want to miss. But surprisingly enough, this call for Joe Biden to resign is starting to gain ground, especially among a far-left crowd that would be happy to steamroll the Democratic normal just to see a female president. Here's another Democrat, filmmaker Andy Ostrov, who echoed in the voice of Jamal, writing on X, quote, "I 1000% agree with what Jamal Simmons just said on CNN, that Biden should immediately resign and allow Kamala Harris to become the 47th president. Let's at least allow America to finally have a woman in the Oval Office, even if only for 2.5 months.
What the hell is wrong with you people?
Man, that is so telling of them, isn't it? Jamal Simmons is actually running with this bizarre new call for Biden to be a transitional figure, and there's hardly anything remaining in the modern left wing, which is put on the lens of identity, to put up a solid argument for why this would be a terrible idea, to say the least.
What about the Supreme Court? That's also out there.
Well, the Supreme Court might happen. I don't know if it will, but I think this is something that's in Joe Biden's control. And if he did it, it would fulfill his last promise. It would give Kamala Harris the chance to be the 47th president of the United States of America. It would disrupt all of Donald Trump's paraphernalia, right? He'd have to rebrand everything. But and it would make it easier for the next woman who runs for president to not have to worry about all the historical, weight of being the first. We can
Top
solve
that,
this problem.
Brad.
I have something that's a lot more realistic.
I could not help but roll my eyes at that. So Joe Biden would become some sort of hero for opening the door for future female presidents? Are we pretending that the Democratic Party hasn't already done everything it could to push Kamala Harris to the front of the line to do exactly that, including going into major debt? First, back in 2020, it was when Biden very openly stated he would limit his vice presidential selection to only a woman of color. Then this year, Kamala was handed the Democratic Party nomination for president by skipping the hard trial of primaries, which every other candidate has to go through. And then do the Democrats want to make Kamala Harris the president by breaking and disrespecting every Democratic norm here?
You must be truly desperate.
I do not know about you, but getting the first female president in this manner by openly allowing her to cut the line, maybe illegally, every time is just condescending to women. And yet, it's hard to expect something better from a party that has abandoned its pro-working class credentials for crude racial and gender-based worldview. And by the way, this wasn't just a one-off for Jamal Simmons. He apparently thought it was a good idea to take this call for Joe Biden's resignation even further, even going into more detail for why he wants Kamala as the president, no matter what damage it does to the Democratic Party's reputation.
We've now had 2 elections with Donald Trump winning the election. The guy's an electoral powerhouse. We just can't deny it. But he's tapped into something that Americans are trying to tell everybody else. But one of the ways he's done it is he's done it by just changing the way we communicate. We live in a reality TV nation where people are getting information on TikTok and on Instagram, and they like the drama. They like the drama. They are okay with things being different. They don't care about our rules. And so when I think about where we are today and that the Democratic Party has to change the way it does business, one of the things that comes to mind is, why should we have to wait for a woman president? President Joe Biden said he wanted to be a transitional figure. He's got one time left. He can do it. I like Joe Biden. I love Joe Biden. I think he's been a great president. I think he's somebody that our kids will learn about and have an amazing educational experience about what he did during his administration. But Joe Biden right now could change the way that we look at politics. Joe Biden right now could resign. He could then hand over the White House, the presidency, to Kamala Harris. She'd be the 47th president of the United States. She'd be the first woman president, the first woman of color president, everything so many of us worked for. Joe Biden could give it to us right now. He also would disrupt Donald Trump's entire marketing plan because 47 would be gone. He would then be the 48th president of the United States. But even more importantly, Kamala Harris wouldn't then have to preside over her own defeat in the United States Senate. Patty Murray would do that as the president pro tem of the Senate. Kamala Harris wouldn't have to sit there while all those states declared themselves for Donald Trump. We could handle this piece of business. We could take care of the entire Biden administration agenda, and we could all keep moving to the new thing.
But you know what I find funny? Joe Biden's never going to do something like this and shoot himself in the foot. A lot of pundits and commentators are already pointing out that Biden has a secret axe to grind with the Democratic establishment, especially the likes of Pelosi's and Obama's, who he believes were the architects of forcing him out of the presidential nominee in a rather unceremonious manner after the disastrous debate. You saw that with how uncharacteristically happy he looked congratulating Donald Trump for the victory at the White House. But there's no denying the fact that this is not the kind of exit that Joe Biden wanted to have in his 50 years in politics. And I'd say certainly not by handing over the presidential glory to his vice president just 2 months away from inauguration. And honestly, it's not even worth getting the first female president for first anything when the entire system of democracy has to be mangled and twisted to make it happen. But Kamala Harris, on her part, is still happy to flaunt being the first everything, I guess, in her career. And that's despite the fact that many have alleged DEI as the reason she got many of her positions, including vice presidency, which, again, Biden said, woman of color.
Back to this point of being a role model. Well, welcome to the role model club. You know, I was the first person to be a woman Attorney General of California. I was the first woman to be elected District Attorney of San Francisco. I was the first person of color to be elected Attorney General of California. Whatever, first. Welcome to the Role Model Club. It's tough. Being a part of the Role Model Club means being in a room where sometimes you may be the only person who has had the experiences you've had. Being a part of the Role Model Club means that people will watch you because they admire your success, and so they're going to watch you to see how you do what you do.
She seems a bit too sure of herself given how she was one of the least popular vice presidents in history and then handed over the biggest victory to the Republicans in over 3 decades. Making her a showpiece of a president for the next 2 months would be a stain on Democrats' truly democratic credentials forever, and it's actually going to create more hindrance for women in politics given the backlash it would generate. But as radical as this entire idea sounds, perhaps we can hope sanity prevails in the party, no matter what fringe segments of it call for in order to satiate their urge or seeing a certain race and gender in the White House. But let me know in the comments what you think about this absurd idea being floated, and share this with your Democrat friends to get a feel for what they think. Either way, I think the next 2 months before the inauguration are going to be more interesting politically than we are ever prepared for.